In the heart of Africa, nestled between the towering hills and lush, untamed forests, was the village of Abari. The air was thick with the scent of vibrant flowers and roasted meats, and the rhythms of drums echoed into the night. The people of Abari were proud and fiercely protective of their heritage. Marriage was sacred, and status was everything. At the heart of this village was Zola, a young woman whose beauty was unmatched. Her skin gleamed like the gold of the setting sun, and her eyes sparkled like the stars in the African night. She had a radiant charm that made her the envy of every woman and the desire of every man. Yet, despite the many suitors lining up for her hand, Zola's heart was elsewhere. While the village marveled at her beauty and wealth, Zola grew restless. She was tired of hearing empty promises and witnessing the shallow competition among her suitors. Men with polished smiles and well-oiled reputations paraded before her, each offering gold, cattle, or elaborate promises of a future in which she would have everything, except perhaps true happiness. And then there was Elian. Elian was unlike anyone Zola had ever met. He lived on the outskirts of the village in a modest hut made of mud and palm leaves, far from the luxurious homes of the rich suitors. His clothes were worn and his hair, thick with the dust of the road, hung loosely around his face. He was often alone, carrying a bundle of herbs, healing potions, and ancient scrolls. The villagers whispered about him. They called him cursed, a misfit with a shadowed past. But Zola saw something different. She noticed how, despite his unkempt appearance, Elian carried a quiet strength. She watched as he spent hours in the village square, assisting the elderly and helping children. She couldn't ignore the spark in his eyes when he spoke of ancient wisdom, healing herbs, and forgotten tales of kings and empires. Zola's heart, typically pulled by the lavish promises of the village's wealthy men, began to race for someone entirely different. Despite the whispers of witchcraft and danger from the village elders, Zola made a choice. She would choose the man that no one else dared to even look at. Zola began meeting Elian secretly, at first under the cover of twilight, and later in the early hours of the morning. Their conversations, light-hearted at first, turned deeper as Elian shared stories of his past. He spoke of his father, the once great King Akintoye, who ruled vast lands and brought prosperity to the people of Abari and beyond. Elian had once been a prince, heir to the throne, but betrayal by those closest to his father had thrown his family into ruin, leaving Elian to wander the world in exile. Despite this, Elian remained humble. He lived off the land, using his knowledge of herbs and healing to survive. He had no desire for riches or power, only a longing for peace and reconciliation with his lost heritage. Zola was captivated. She saw in him a resilience that the men of the village lacked, a quiet strength that came not from wealth, but from experience. One evening, as Zola and Elian sat under the grand baobab tree, the moonlight filtering through the branches above them, Zola leaned in and whispered, "You are the greatest treasure I have ever found. They may see you as an outcast, but I see a king in you." Elian smiled softly, his eyes filled with both sadness and hope. "A king with no crown," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. But to Zola, his words didn't matter. She had found her prince. As Zola's affection for Elian grew, so did the suspicion of the villagers. Whispers filled the air every time she passed by, and some elders even began to warn her to be careful. They said Elion's soul was cursed, that he was not worthy of a woman like her. But Zola's resolve only hardened. She began to defy the expectations of her parents and the village, standing by Elion's side even when others scoffed. Her father, Chief Kofi, a powerful and respected leader, noticed her growing attachment to the outcast. He was not pleased. One afternoon, Chief Kofi summoned Zola to his grand house, where he sat on a throne made of polished wood and gold. "Zola," he said sternly, "I have arranged a marriage for you to Kwame, the richest man in Abari. His cattle are plentiful, his lands are vast, and his influence can elevate us all." Zola's heart sank. Kwame was arrogant, self-serving, and lacked any depth. But her father would hear no objections. "I do not wish to marry Kwame, father," she replied firmly. "I have already given my heart to someone else." Chief Kofi's face hardened. "You are making a grave mistake. Elion is nothing but trouble. He is an outcast, and if you marry him, you will bring shame to this family." Zola stood tall. "I will not marry for status, father. I will marry for love."
That night, Zola left the comfort of her home and secretly met with Elion. But their happiness was short-lived. As the days passed, Zola's secret relationship with Elion became harder to conceal. The villagers grew more suspicious, and rumors began to spread like wildfire. Finally, one day, Chief Kofi, tired of his daughter's defiance, decided to confront Elion. He ordered the young healer to meet him in the village square. The tension in the air was thick as Chief Kofi, his council of elders, and dozens of villagers gathered around. Zola stood by Elion's side, defiant, her heart pounding in her chest. The murmurs from the crowd only grew louder. "You have come here bringing my daughter shame," Chief Kofi began. "What are you truly after? Why have you come to Abari?" Elion stepped forward, his voice steady, his presence commanding. "I am not who you think I am, Chief Kofi. I am Elion Akintoye, the son of King Akintoye, the rightful heir to the throne of Abari." The crowd gasped, their faces filled with disbelief. Zola's eyes widened as she turned to Elion. He continued, "My family was once great, and I, a prince, was destined to lead, but betrayal took everything from us. I was exiled, forced to live in the shadows. I've lived as a healer, a wanderer, but I am not a beggar. I have returned not for revenge, but to reclaim my heritage." The village fell silent. Elion's true identity, the identity he had hidden for so long, was now exposed. The villagers, who had once seen him as a curse, now saw him as royalty. But the real challenge was yet to come. Before the crowd could even begin to process the shock, a group of warriors appeared on horseback, led by a man wearing a crown of twisted gold. It was Moses, the former ally who had betrayed King Akintoye. He had returned, intending to seize the throne for himself. With a cold, cruel smile, Moses announced, "The prince has returned, but it is too late. The throne is mine now. Abari will fall under my rule, and nothing will stop me." Elion, his calmness unwavering, turned to Zola and said, "We must fight for our people, for our future." The village united under Elion's leadership, and a fierce battle ensued. Zola fought alongside Elion, her heart full of courage. In the end, with his superior knowledge of strategy and the help of the villagers, Elion and Zola led their people to victory, driving Moses and his followers out of Abari. With the battle won, Tariq was crowned the rightful king, and Zola his queen. The people of Abari, once divided and skeptical, now embraced their new leaders. Under their rule, the village flourished, not because of wealth or power, but because of love, wisdom, and unity. Zola's decision to choose the man nobody wanted had not only changed her life, but had transformed the entire village. And in the end, Zola's belief in the true value of a person, that love and integrity mattered more than titles, proved to be the greatest treasure of all. Their story became a legend, passed down from generation to generation, a tale of love, sacrifice, and the power of seeing beyond the surface.